69-hour workweek upsets MZ generation in South Korea. Learning from Ukraine, Taiwan shows off its drones. Only 13 countries and territories had healthy air quality in 2022. Bali foreign tourists banned from riding motorbikes. 500,000 Israelis join latest protest. India to discourage foreign trade settlement in Chinese yuan. Alexei Navalny learns documentary about him wins Oscar. India plans to crack down on pre-installed apps on smartphones.
Hello, I'm Wade Lee. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. It is Wednesday, March 15th, and here are your top stories. Korean MZ generation of millennials and Generation Z members balked at the idea of raising the maximum weekly work hour to 69 from the current cap of 52, as many saw it as destroying a healthy work-life balance. As a result, the Office of President Yoon Suk-yeol instructed relevant agencies to reconsider plans and communicate better with the public, especially with Generation Z and millennials. South Korea is already the most overworked country in Asia, with employees logging an average of 1,915 hours in 2021.
The South Korean Labor Ministry under Yuan had suggested last week to revise the current 52-hour workweek system to calculations on a monthly, quarterly, and yearly basis that could allow hours to swell during peak periods. Before the retreat announcement, the revised bill was expected to be submitted to the parliament as early as June. A labor union, with many members from MZ generation, said the government's plan runs counter to global trends of a 4-day workweek.
Taiwan showcased new models of its domestically produced military drones on Tuesday, saying they are key to its asymmetric warfare capacity to make its force more agile if they have to face a far larger Chinese military. In a rare display of its drone capabilities, the military-owned National Zhongshan Institute of Science and Technology showed off its latest models, including the Albatross 2 surveillance drone and combat drones that operate with global positioning system satellites.
其实台湾我们中华民国研发无人机在亚洲国家来讲都是相当先进，而且
Among the drones on display was an attack drone with loitering munitions that can cruise towards a target before plummeting at velocity and detonating on impact. Taiwan's defense ministry said in a report to parliament this week that China was quickly building up its combat capacity with drones, including swarms of flying robots. In response, Taiwan will develop its combat and surveillance drones and anti-drone systems. Taiwan's military has announced a partnership with companies aimed at producing 3,000 drones next year.
A new report by IQ Air, a company that tracks air quality worldwide, found that average annual air pollution in roughly 90% of the countries and territory analyzed exceeded the World Health Organization's air quality guidelines. IQ Air analyzed average air quality from 131 countries and territories and found that just 6 countries, Australia, Estonia, Finland, Grenada, Iceland, and New Zealand, and 7 territories in the Pacific and Caribbean, including Guam and Puerto Rico, met the WHO air quality guidelines.
The study found 8 countries, Chad, Iraq, Pakistan, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, Kuwait, and India, had poor air quality that far exceeded the WHO guidelines with average air pollution over 50 micrograms per cubic meter. Around the world, researchers said the main sources of air pollution last year were wildfires and the burning of fossil fuels for transportation and energy production, which wreaked havoc on the most vulnerable and marginalized communities.
Bali has had enough of unruly riders. Foreign tourists won't be allowed to use motorcycles to get around the island after a string of accidents led to injuries and even deaths. On Monday, from here on, foreigners should only use modes of transport prepared by tourism services that meet certain standards to ensure quality and dignified tourism. Governor Yuan said they're disorderly and they misbehave. It's unclear how the ban would be upheld.
Coaster has sought the legal ministry's support to let Bali revoke visas if any foreign tourists are found riding motorbikes or if they're found committing other wrongdoings like illegally working or misusing stay permits. Last month, a Russian tourist was detained by the police after riding while under the influence of alcohol and crashing into a local rider, causing him to be hospitalized. In January, a Ukrainian tourist and a Russian visitor died in a road traffic collision.
I always needed time on my own. I never thought I'd be here.
I take your blessings with your heartaches too. It's so easy and so wonderful to know it's you.
学习，一切从今天开始。FUNDAY 英语。
500,000 Israelis took to the streets in the 10th consecutive week of protests against plans by the government of Benjamin Netanyahu to overhaul the country's judicial system. Israel has a population of just over 9 million, so its organizers' estimates are correct. About 5% of Israelis came out to voice their opposition to the proposed reforms. Nearly half of the protesters, about 240,000, gathered in Tel Aviv. In Jerusalem, several hundred demonstrators gathered in front of President Isaac Herzog's house.
In Tel Aviv, thousands tried to block a major highway and clashed with police.
The protesters carried Israeli flags and chanted slogans including Israel will not be a dictatorship. Last Thursday, Herzog urged the Netanyahu government to take the judicial overhaul legislation off the table. Protesters and critics of Netanyahu's plan say it would weaken the country's courts and erode the judiciary's ability to check the power of the country's other branches of government. The package of legislation would give Israel's parliament, the Knesset, the power to overrule Supreme Court decisions with a simple majority.
3 government officials involved in policymaking and 2 banking sources said India has asked banks and traders to avoid using Chinese yuan to pay for Russian imports because of long-running political differences with its neighbor. 3 government officials said India, which has emerged as a top buyer of Russian oil as well as discounted coal, would prefer the use of United Arab Emirates dirhams to settle trade. India officials said that India cannot allow settlements in yuan till the relationship between the 2 countries improve.
The country has asked banks and traders to avoid using Chinese yuan to pay for Russian imports.
Thousands of Indian and Chinese troops have been locked in a standoff along their disputed Himalayan border since 2021, casting a shadow over the whole relationship. Last year, India's biggest cement producer, Ultratech Cement, used Chinese yuan for a cargo of Russian coal, which raised some concerns among officials as relationship between India and China has deteriorated after deadly border clashes in 2020 in the remote Galwan Valley of Ladakh. But it also makes Russia reluctant to accept payment in the Indian currency for its exports.
Imprisoned Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny learned Monday from his lawyer that a film detailing his poisoning and political activism won the Oscars for Best Documentary Feature. According to his spokeswoman, Kira Yarmish, the 46-year-old politician was attending a court hearing via video link from the prison when his attorney broke the news to him about the documentary, Navalny, by director Daniel Roher. Yarmish called it the most remarkable announcement of an Oscar win in history.
Okay, so Alexei, I want to talk about something that we sort of touched on this morning.
According to Yarmish, Navalny faced a court hearing in Kovrov, a town near the prison in the Vladimir region east of Moscow. The documentary portrays Navalny's career of fighting official corruption, his near-fatal poisoning with a nerve agent in 2020 that he blames on the Kremlin, his 5-month recuperation in Germany, and his 2021 return to Moscow, where he was immediately taken into custody at the airport. He was later sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, and last year was convicted and given another 9-year term.
According to 2 people and a government document seen by Reuters, India plans to force smartphone makers to allow removal of pre-installed apps and mandate screening of major operating system updates under proposed new rules. The new rules, details of which have not been previously reported, could extend launch timelines in the world's second largest smartphone market and lead to losses in business from pre-installed apps for players including Samsung, Xiaomi, Viveo, and Apple.
The inability to uninstall pre-installed apps. But this could soon change for Indian smartphone users.
Currently, most smartphones come with pre-installed apps that cannot be deleted, such as Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi's App Store GetApps, Samsung's payment app Samsung Pay Mini, and iPhone maker Apple's browser Safari. Under the new rules, smartphone makers will have to provide an uninstall option, and new models will be checked for compliance by a lab authorized by the Bureau of Indian Standards Agency. The Indian government has decided to give smartphone makers a year to comply.
FUNDAY News will help sharpen your English skills while keeping you informed on current international events. Tune into our other FUNDAY programs to learn more about the world's most important topics in English. Click the link below now to join FUNDAY for free. I'm Wei Li, your host. I'll see you next time.